this is a watch that literally just works well with everything. What are you seeing with like the global vintage Heuer market?
It was kind of quiet last year, but 2024 has been a lot stronger.
I think this might be my favorite of the four you brought out today.
That's very Adam Golden DNA right there.
We are back today with a very special guest, a very good friend of mine. We go way back, Mr. Eric Wind of Wind Vintage. Eric and I, fun fact, know each other for well over a decade now, before either of us were dealers or you were working for Christie's or... Before that, yeah. And we were both just kind of obsessed with vintage watches, and we'd bounce ideas off of each other, ask each other advice on buying stuff or where the market was or whether watches were original or not, and kind of like grew our knowledge and passion together at the same time before everybody else was as obsessed as we were, or at least it was like a small pocket of it.
But I would say I wouldn't be a dealer without you kind of paving the way with what you did with Menta watches.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I really wouldn't.
I don't think I'd be as astute of a collector had we not like met each other at the same time and like, you know, kind of just went down that rabbit hole together. So it's very much, and I think that's the best part of like vintage watches in general, is how collaborative it is. But anyways, aside from all of that bullshit, Eric was in the area showing a client some fantastic watches. He was like, hey, I want to stop by and say hi, and I always want to see some fantastic watches. So here we are. We have four, I kind of didn't look at them because I want to hear you explain them.
Yes.
Very cool watches. So let's just jump right into it. What do we have on the table today from Mr. Magic Eric Wind?
We could start with a platinum.
Get closer.
Sure.
Come on, move it.
A platinum Omega Constellation. It's a Grand Luxe.
Before we started filming, I'm like, Charlie, what did you guys bring? Because Charlie's sitting off in the corner, staring at us with, goo-goo eyes over there. And he's like, I brought a very expensive Constellation. I'm like, I don't think those two words go together.
Typically not. Until you start looking at platinum and original platinum bracelet.
Hell, what is the story with this watch? This is crazy.
It was one of two watches ordered by someone in Kuwait in 1958. Consecutive serial numbers for the cases and movements. The other one actually sold at Omega Mania in 2007 for 471,000 Swiss francs.
Whoa!
Yeah. So this is the number right after it, and that first one I believe sold to the Omega Museum.
Okay.
This is the only one in private hands. I got it from a collector who's had it over a quarter of a century.
Wow.
And it's really special. It's not something I've ever held before, and it's really the best of the best in terms of Omega time-only watches.
No, this is crazy. I mean, this is very much a watch like you have to know what it is, and you have to pick it up to like understand it's platinum. Like, feel the weight of this, because anybody looking at it is like, oh, it's steel. You know,
the bracelet's like 8.5 inches as well, so it'll fit just about anyone.
Do these links come off? Is it like a rivet
I think
style?
It could be cut.
Yeah, it'd have to be cut, but I think you could save these links if the jeweler does it the right way.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Wow.
It's kind of like a disco ball. But it's something I figured you hadn't seen, I hadn't seen before except in photos.
Yeah, I didn't even know this existed.
It's crazy to watch.
That's crazy. So, I mean, do you think the market for Omega, something like that, was stronger in 2007 during the Omega Mania than it is today?
It was nuts. Yeah. And we were just mentioning that. It's like some very astute collectors I know are beginning to look at Omega in a serious way and buying world-class examples, because it's just... it seems like it's at the bottom. Yeah,
I mean, we were talking earlier before the camera started rolling. We probably should have had them rolling, but we just talked like we normally do. That like the Speedmaster market is not where it once was, and it's hard for you and I to talk about this on camera without it seem like we're pushing a narrative, which we're not. I mean, listen, I have some of these watches in stock, sure, and I'd love to sell them, but it's not like I have stockpiles of 50 of them where it's like, okay, let me move the market. But in reality, in my opinion, Speedmasters, matte dial, gilt dial, Submariners, a lot of these kind of watches that were very popular and now have kind of taken a backseat to weirder trends like integrated bracelet watches, although this isn't integrated. But and Cartier stuff, more like vintage Patek, that's popular right now. It's taken a back seat, and it's a good time to buy because the market is so deflated.
Yes.
Like I'm wearing an Ultraman that is the cheapest I've ever seen one listed for in quite a long time.
Good condition.
Yeah. So what do you see the market on such a watch as? Like, how do you price something like this?
It's very hard. It's very hard. We have it at a pretty high price on our site, $300,000.
Okay.
It's just find another. I'm always welcome to hear any offer. And
right.
It's certainly probably not something we'll see come up again. You know?
For sure. Yeah, it's
I
something
believe
that, like,
only 2 are like it, basically, in that configuration. And like I said, the others in the Omega Museum.
did Omega confirm that only 2 are made, or just 2 that come to market?
That's my understanding. They privately confirmed that to the collector
Right.
who owned it some years ago.
Yeah,
So
I think Omega's in a weird position right now, I think, because of what happened with the 2915 a couple years ago, and the brand kind of staying quiet, and now
doing extracts and all
I
this
was
stuff.
literally just going to say, not doing extracts like really hurts, because it doesn't encourage buyers to like want to jump into the market, because it's like, well, how do I make sure I'm not making the same mistake that they made?
Exactly.
You know?
And this has an old extract, but still, it's like just generally Omega's a little quiet right now.
Heard rumors that the extract system is going to start up again, that they took the situation seriously, and that they're going to actually like revamp and like, you know, do cleaning of the house in terms of like their heritage department, their museum, the historical department, all that stuff. And they're going to actually like have a proper inventory.
I heard that too.
Really take it seriously, which they should, because you know a lot of the watches that are in their collection. I know a lot of the watches that are in their collection. The general public does too. They have the most important Omegas of all time.
Yep.
It's a collection that deserves to have some like real life breathed into it, you know, and would really support the market.
Yep. So nice.
So getting back to this one,
Yeah.
This is crazy. Wow. Well, yeah, you didn't disappoint off the bat. What else do we have on the table with us?
Got an early or very special Seafarer and a Carrera case.
Tell us about it.
It's the reference 2447, which people, when they hear that reference, typically think of the Heuer Carrera 3 register, but this was by Abercrombie and Fitch in the mid-1960s. I thought this was a cool watch since you and I partnered on a similar one like 7-8 years ago. We partnered on a couple
literally
of them.
gonna say I had a really fond memory of like the nicest one I ever had of you and I buying for, I mean, comparatively
So cheap,
speaking,
yeah.
so cheap to where they are today, from an auction house that no one knew about until
time.
everybody knew
Yeah,
about.
exactly. And that watch, funnily enough, had been offered to Christie's before I worked there, and then basically they didn't even know what it was, and they said no. Sotheby's said no.
Recently?
Back then,
I was
yeah.
like, what?
And it was just really funny, but. Yeah, I love those watches. There's now a lot more interest in the Seafarer, I would say, because Hodinkee just did the Tag Heuer Seafarer, and Tag Heuer's doing their own version coming out now. So it's cool to see it go mainstream,
right,
when it really was super niche and really vintage collectors only knew what that watch was.
And it was niche within an already niche circle of Heuer collectors.
Exactly.
That being said, I mean, I've sold my fair share of Seafarers. I'm sure you even more than me. I've never had any problem with getting interest in one of those watches, and they always sell relatively quickly. You know,
they're awesome watches.
So people really understand them, and they're not cheap. Like, what is the asking price for this example?
That would be north of $50,000.
Right. So it's not like we're talking about like a $5,000 watch. You know, you have to really be into this kind of watch to want to dive into it. This one, by the way, looks fantastic.
It's so nice.
It looks really, really nice. Like, super sharp case. Yeah. I haven't had one in probably a couple years at this point. Has the market kind of stayed the same? Like, where
It's moved up, I would say, over the last year.
Interesting.
You know.
What are you seeing with like the global vintage Heuer market?
It was kind of quiet last year, but 2024 has been a lot stronger. I don't know exactly why. I think there's a lot of interest with like the Kith Heuer stuff. They are doing really well with the marketing. Now the Seafarer, there's talk of them being the Formula One watch. You're a Formula One nut,
Right.
So they might replace Rolex next year. I think it's been great what they're doing, and it's certainly helped. It's been a lot easier to sell vintage Heuer chronographs this year than last year.
Yeah, I've noticed myself, and again, I think you probably sell more because I know you've been a champion of Heuer like your entire life.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I having a conversation years ago when Heuer was on the downslide after the Heuer Parade Philippe sale.
Yep.
And you had like a very good comment that still sticks with me. You're like, it's a shame when the market goes down and how that affects your enjoyment of the watch.
That's
like
true.
It shouldn't really matter what the market of a watch is, the market value, excuse me, of a watch is, and it shouldn't have any effect on when you put the watch on your wrist and whether you enjoy it or not, but
Yep.
we're human.
Yeah,
and we
the
can't,
psychology really does affect a lot of.
yeah, I mean, listen, even it affects me. You know, if I buy a watch for my own personal collecting and I know the market's tanked, I'll still enjoy the watch, but like I'll still look down and be like, shit, I'm gonna lose 10 grand when I sell this. You know?
Yeah.
It's unavoidable.
Yep.
And I think the Heuer Parade was taken a lot out of context for most collectors. I thought it was generally pretty successful, but everybody's expectations were so high.
Too much.
Too high.
Yep.
The collection could have been more diversified in terms of who they took the watches from. A lot of mistakes were made,
Yep.
but it shouldn't have had such a big impact on the market, but it did.
Yep.
And I said from the jump, like, all these things are cyclical and Heuer will come back. And I think now, I'm noticing now personally that now that prices have stabilized for like the past couple years now, people are more willing to buy and
they're coming back into it.
Coming back into it. You know, you could pick up a nice 2447S and whatever for a reasonable price, let's say anywhere from 6,000 to 15,000, depending on condition, whatever.
Exactly.
And you don't have to spend 20K plus anymore just to start. You know?
Exactly.
So, and I think that stability has like brought a lot more people back into the fold.
Yeah, and I'm seeing new people wanting to buy these watches for the first time.
Yeah.
It is stable. It's a really good thing.
Have you been like participating in like On the Dash or any of the forums anymore?
I do follow it. I do comment occasionally.
Nice.
You know, the forums aren't what they were used to be. It's more Instagram and things like that.
I don't think I've myself, I've read from time to time, but I haven't participated in On the Dash, Omega forums, Vintage Rolex forums in years anymore.
The other problem is if we post on there, everyone might say, oh, you're a dealer, you're self-interested. Again, like that idea rather than an enthusiast or collector.
Right.
There's no agenda. We're just I'm really passionate about these things as a dealer.
Same.
But you don't want to get, you know, negative comments or whatever about that.
I mean, I try to like have a thick skin as it relates to all of that. I think most people who know us personally know that like we are very much obsessed with these watches as much as anybody else, and we were collectors way before we were dealers. You know?
For sure.
We buy stuff all the time for ourselves that we don't resell or we don't care to make money on. Like it's just a fact of life. But I get that it's hard for a lot of people, you know, to see their precious watches sometimes being resold for higher prices. To take that with, you know, feel some kind of way about it, have some negative.
I would say one advice I have is never buy watches from someone who's not a collector, because you can never trust a skinny chef either. You've got to be buying from someone who's passionate about this.
Well, you have to buy from somebody who at least like knows what they're doing and they're
loves
talking
it
about.
And
even if you don't buy from somebody like us where you have recourse and you buy, like you said, from another collector, if something's misdescribed, you would hope that that collector would like take it as a personal affront that they'd want to work out the situation.
Exactly.
You know?
I joke that the best dealers are collectors because they often, you sell the watch and then they want to sell it back or whatever, and they're like, no, I'm a collector.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who trade on that.
Yeah, I feel like the line for me has gotten so blurred between like collector, trader, dealer.
It really is.
Because I think with social media and the way collecting has been like shaped in the past, let's say 5 years, everybody's so in and out of watches, and not because necessarily they're looking to like flip a watch and make money, but like as a collector, they're buying a watch and then they realize they don't really love it, or they get, you know, kind of like squirrel, something else online, and they really want that. And so like they're trading watches so frequently that like you wouldn't be so far off base to call them a dealer.
Yeah, of course, there's a lot of dealer collectors. For
right. Collector dealers.
Yeah, exactly.
Collector dealers. Yeah, well, I'm really happy to hear that the market on these Seafarers, to bring it back, is still where it was, if not even stronger.
It feels like the strongest it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, they're special watches. Like they really are within the, you know, confines of Heuer collecting. I think it's like almost the top, or probably the top of like special watches with real history that are interesting, you know, and collectible. So good to see that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I gotta get another one of these in stock.
Yeah.
You keep buying up all the nice ones.
Exactly.
What else we got?
In terms of kind of just pure, the Patek Philippe Calatrava, that's a reference 2508. I know it's a reference you like a lot. I actually bought that bracelet from you a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Put it on the watch. It's a great compliment to the watch.
You've bought a lot of bracelets from me over the years. Like, you're like a bracelet whore. Fiend.
I love a good bracelet on a good watch. I just love the dagger markers, those Dauphine hands. It's just very pure design.
I've always loved this reference just because of the size. I'm a sucker for like 34, 35 millimeter and waterproof case. You know, cool. How the lugs kind of like shape around your wrist. It's just perfect.
I like cases with holes for the spring bars as well, which the SAT.
Where it makes it easier.
Very easy. I just like it. Looks very kind of utilitarian tool aspect, despite being so elegant.
I think, and also I feel like this is a watch that literally just works well with everything.
So
like
cool.
It's just like a perfect like everyday watch, dressy, casual. It doesn't really matter. And it's like a, just like a piece of like perfect history on your wrist.
It really
like
is.
A perfect era of Patek Philippe.
It really
Perfect
is.
era.
It's my favorite time only Patek. It really is cool.
Interesting. I don't, I've never really thought about like what my favorite Patek time only is. I'd have to give that some like more thought.
Yeah, there's some big ones. Obviously, the JB Champion, $4 million watch, platinum, all these other things. But I just like that for all the reasons.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes like it doesn't
have to be.
It just has to speak to you, and that's really it. And I think I've seen a lot of collectors finally getting back to that place where it's not just about speculation or what other people think. It's like they put the watch on the wrist and they have to like it. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, don't worry about all the other bullshit. Like, you have to wear it. Like, you have to be happy with it.
Exactly.
So it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks or what the market thinks or, what your, friends in your get-together groups are going to think. You have to like it because you're going to be with the watch the whole time.
Exactly.
How's the market for 2508?
Very strong, I think, for great condition.
Yeah.
It's hard to find them in great condition. There's a lot more awareness about case condition, dial condition, all that sort of thing over the last 5 years. So people are pretty picky, I think. You would probably say you see the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are picky, like, overall.
Yeah.
It's not just a Patek thing. I think it's like a global market thing. And I think the divide between, like, average watches and truly special watches just keeps growing in terms of price.
Yep.
And that's okay. I think there needs to be that, differentiation. And it's not that watches that are not perfect are valid, because they are. There's a place and time for every kind of watch and every kind of collector. Watches like this, for me, are for people who have been collecting a while, and they're like, okay, I've owned the okay examples, the nice wear beater examples, now I want to own the best one, and I think that's an aspirational place to get to, It's a shame sometimes when new collectors get in, they're like, no, I have to have it 10 out of 10. It's like, well, you don't want to like cut the line, do you? Like, just, work your way up there, buy some stuff, make some mistakes, like see what you like, see what works for you, and then get to that place, but everybody's different, How have you seen the market for vintage Patek in general?
Stronger as well now than it has been, I would say. People are also super picky, just as you said, but a great vintage Patek sells pretty quickly.
Even when it's like not great condition, you're talking about, like, for example, like a 1518 or a 2499, they don't even have to be amazing to sell for big money these days, because people are just like hungry to get that like grail Patek. They could live with a few flaws here and there just because they know the opportunities to buy these are so few and far between. It's the first time in my entire career that I've heard of several yellow 1518 selling in the seven figures. When did that happen? I don't think there's even auction comps for that.
No.
And all of a sudden, I've heard of several sales privately, not just one, like several sales privately in the seven figures for good 1518s.
It's good. I mean, it's great for the market.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I think Patek's always been one of those brands for me that it's like vintage Patek. There's always a steady, loyal fan base, and like the interest in it goes up and down, goes up and down. It's always there.
Yeah.
But like whether everybody's like, oh my God, need to buy vintage Patek, it goes up and down every day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Super watch, man. I think on this bracelet, it's absolutely perfect. I think you knocked it out of the park.
I was happy I held onto that bracelet.
So you have a bunch of bracelets for sale on your website. So is that just a byproduct of you buying up way too many bracelets?
I've got several hundred bracelets. And my wife, Christine, was like, you got to do something about all this. And it's also hard for us, as Charlie can attest, like sometimes to keep track of all this stuff. So it's almost easier now that it's more organized. And like, I shop my own stash like every day, if you will, like, oh, this would be great on here or whatever. And people sometimes come by and they like have a watch and we look at 10 different bracelets on it and they usually find something they like. So
I'm horrible with organizing my bracelets. We have so many and just like
a bucket
so many
full
parts and like bracelets that are like, oh, the end links are wrong, or throw it in the drawer, fix it later. And I don't remember my costs on any of them.
Exactly.
Horrible. It's a mess.
It's better.
Well, kudos to Christine, and if you guys need any bracelets at Eric,
you know where to
go on his website. He's got a bunch listed there.
Just on the bottom of the site.
Sounds like a lot more
not listed yet.
And what do we have? Last watch here.
You and I both love a great black dial sports watch, but particularly with the gilt printing. That is a reference 6350 with a honeycomb dial.
I'll say it's not an ordinary black gilt dial.
Various early Explorers. It was owned by an actor named Spencer Tracy.
Okay.
He wore it in a movie, The Mountain, in 1956.
Oh, sweet.
And there's kind of portraits of him in the 1960s wearing this watch. It's just spectacular condition. The original radium in the hands and on the dial.
Yeah, it looks unpolished too.
Original crystal.
Wow.
I had it lightly buffed, but it's the original crystal. Case is unpolished. I love that huge bezel on the 6350s. And that interesting handset, you know, longer hour hand with a pointed minute hand, syringe minute hand. It's just, that dial is a killer. And the gold print is a killer.
No, honestly, like, and the 6350s, the honeycomb dials in particular, like, they didn't age well. So, like, when you find one that's, like, still amazing, and I've only seen a handful in my life.
Yeah, it's
like,
so rare.
It's such a special watch. Was this sold by, like, the estate of
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It went to auction. It was a benefit that I knew the auction house and talked with the specialist there, because they weren't, for whatever reason, allowed to say it was Spencer Tracy's watch, but he told me privately, and then I immediately went on Getty Images and started looking for photos and then put all the pieces together. I was wow, there's great photos of him wearing this watch. I was very happy to win that watch.
This is absolutely insane. What a killer watch. Like, this has to be one of the nicest.
Yeah, it's the nicest I've seen.
Yeah, it has to be a very, very special watch. What's the market on these things looking like these days? I think the last time I sold one was in 2020, 2021.
It's been a while. Yeah. I mean, it's well in the 100+ range.
Right. So same as kind of where it's
yeah.
I mean, these trade in this condition so infrequently that I can't imagine the market's like so
they're the most expensive Explorers for sure.
Yeah.
Which is still a fraction of, you know, subs and obviously Daytonas and even GMT 6542s. I love Explorers. I know you do as well. Just, it's kind of a perfect one watch vintage collection. But among that, that's like the pinnacle of the collecting of vintage Explorers.
Yeah, this is the Grail Explorer, if you will.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Without getting into like cosine dials or albinos or anything like that. For me, the Explorers have always like represented that like sweet spot between like wearing a casual date just, but wearing something sporty that actually has lineage of like being a tool watch.
Exactly.
You know? And yeah, like you said, like it could be a one watch collection watch for everybody because the size is just perfect. And I don't care if you have big wrists, you can still wear it.
Yes.
And it just works in every occasion, you know, and always looks fantastic.
I just love the 369 dial. It's just pure.
Yeah, and there's a reason that everybody loves it.
Exactly.
It's not
like,
just you, it's not just
exactly.
me, like,
it's just
everybody
something like
that, you know?
instinctual.
Yeah. It's truly special. This is a special watch. I think this might be my favorite of the four you brought out today.
That's very Adam Golden DNA right there.
Yeah,
it's good.
If I could take one of these watches home, all values being aside, I would take the Omega and sell it and then keep the
all right, good, good.
Just
exactly.
Yeah, this is awesome. Well, you did not disappoint.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, these are really fantastic
Thank you for having me. I watch pretty much every one of your videos.
No, you don't.
I really do. And it's the only content I really consume in the vintage watch space.
Thank you, bro. Well, we'll have to do one next time I get up to West Palm Beach and do like a more proper tour of like all of your inventory.
Yeah, thank you.
But I mean, if this is what you're swinging by, just like to randomly show a client while you're in the area, like, man, we got to get up at some point. See the rest of the safe for sure. Awesome.
Thank you. It was awesome.